We're going to look at in just a moment the incredible idea of the reality of the resurrection. As you come to your truth, as is lived for the first time the reality of you and your maturity, in your coming into your new sense of consciousness. If you really stop and think about it, of what significance with the resurrection, or ostensibly the resurrection, the overcoming of death, of the carpenter 2,000 years ago in Nazareth, have possibly to do with you? Yet in reality, if it doesn't finally have to do with you, it has nothing to do with anything. Was it of historic significance that a man who had, through manifestations of particular qualities in miracle ideas, or the performance of miracles, which led subsequently to the idea that he was a savior or an advanced prophet? There was nothing new about that. Nothing. The idea of the crucifixion certainly wasn't new. That was one of the most common methods of execution in its day, wasn't it? Previous to then, the road to Jerusalem was strewn with over 800 people who had been hung on a cross. Historically, it apparently didn't mean anything, at least for a considerable length of time, and is barely mentioned in what was termed the civilized world. Yet in your memory patterns, as you sit here tonight, are constituted all of the remembering that occurred in the drama that was played out in the incredible allegory of you going through a process of limitation into a process of remembrance of your initiation, of whence you came. And that's what's enacted on Easter Sunday morning. Does it have to do with you? It has directly to do with you. Sometime it would be interesting to talk about the layers of awareness in the Easter story, wouldn't it? As esoterically presented the idea that the crucifixion and resurrection occur in your microcosm or in your body. And these are all high truths. Nothing has ever occurred in what we would call the realm of space-time consciousness that did not have directly to do with you as you are at this moment, as you think of yourself. And in fact, it has nothing at all to do with anything except it directly pertains to your state of consciousness in attempts to identify the sense of beingness that you find yourself in at this moment. The true value of everything that has ever occurred historically in what is defined as history or cause and effect or relationships in fracturedism have finally only to do with you now at this moment in regard to how it is recognized in your individual system of identity. Was it you then, who were taken before Pontius Pilate and condemned to death and hung on a cross? Of course. Was it you then who mocked in the streets at the time of the crucifixion? Of course. Was it you that stood guard and rolled dice for the cross? Of course. Was it you who fell asleep in the Garden of Gethsemane at the time of the trial, of the passion, of man consciousness overcoming his limitation and going through the process of death in order that the recognition of the eternity of consciousness in the universe could be manifest? Of course it was you that fell asleep. The identity Jesus, as constructed author of Course in Miracles, speaks very plainly of his identity of you at this moment in the relationship of man consciousness in regard to Jesus. Of course. Are we saying then that this salvation or the atonement or the enlightenment in the manifestation of evil that is evident at this stage of consciousness can only be discovered or uncovered by you individually awakening to the truth of you? The answer is yes. It will not be accomplished in any other way. The directive for you by all awakened identifications is only follow me. You may do as I have done. It could not be any other way. The hesitancy on your part, as identified in your limited state of consciousness, to fully pursue the idea of eternity is difficult because it requires finally the absolute acknowledgement of the unreality of you as you have defined yourself in all of space-time. We'll be back in just a moment. As I sit here with you, I have a perfect recollection of what occurs in the death process, of what happens when you die. I could give you very explicit details in regard to examination of the bardo, the feelings, the occurrence of the death and awakening process. The incredible sudden realization that there's no turning back at the time you enter the portal. The sudden determination to see it through at that point and retain identification of it in a total abandonment of the process. The peace that passeth understanding, and the ordeal is over and you come into the truth of recognition that you're still here and still alive. The glory of the light that you behold in truth that comes about in you are these things that you have read about or heard about or had some dimension or inclination to accept or deny? Of course not. I'm here to proclaim to you that the awakening process that you are going through, the resurrection, the atonement, occurs in you totally. In the transfiguration of the cellular construction that you identify at this moment in space-time as body and in no other fashion. Period. There are no such things as half-truths. There is no such thing as a partial atonement, as a partial state of forgiveness, a partial state of non-guilt, a partial state of innocence, a partial state of defenselessness, a partial idea of abandonment. The whole dilemma that you have ever experienced in identification of selfness has always been the idea that there were variant forms of truth or unity or love or reality. There aren't. Light is light and dark is dark. The transformation of your consciousness is a singular event that must occur in you individually as you recognize yourself at this moment, and in no other fashion. All of the teachings that have been given and expressed to man in his corruption have been to direct you to the realization that as you are now at this moment constituted in consciousness, you are literally all that there is in that sense of beingness, I assure you. If you would choose to identify me in your limited state of sleepiness or death as an elder brother at this moment, you may well afford to do so. But if you give me qualities in which you can therefore identify your own duality, you will be in sin, you will be in death, you will be in limited identity. The absolute truth, finally, that all conceptions are invalid is the highest sense that I could attempt to convey to you, although obviously it's not understandable. Not only what we're saying actually is not only everything that you see about you unreal, but your idea about it at the highest level is also unreal. You are finally at the highest level, not even a conception of yourself. You simply are a state of beingness in truth and union and love and bliss and happiness and joy. Has it occurred to you that as I sit then as your elder and say these things to you, why you simply don't turn and rush into the arms of truth? Has it occurred to you that if what we in fact teach is true, as Jesus would express it in Course in Miracles, is true, why you simply won't abandon it? You, individually. Not the constructs of your semi-consciousness outside of you. They have no relationship with the truth except as you have identified them. Just you. Just you do it. Does that then require a form of courage, of determination, of full endeavor, of commitment? I guess. As long as you don't attempt to measure what degree you're committed to. I may say to you in absolute truth, the idea of persecution is nutty. It's insane. There's no possibility. If there's a God that you could be persecuted. I heard of someone last night on television say that God was inflicting this form of pain in order that you would somehow overcome it and come to the recognition. It's a strange sort of a God. There's no truth in that. That somehow he allows an evil force to stand against him in some manner for whatever devious methods he might be allowed by the strange idea that limited consciousness has about truth. There's no truth in that. There never could be. The only thing, as we have said many times before, that could ever be evil or cause you pain or death or distress is yourself. And yourself in defiance of your Creator, which is more difficult. Is it you then that were persecuted and abandoned? Killed? And raised up and was born and reconstituted consciousness in body in a limited manner with full cognition of death? Of course it was you. And that process is what you're going through right now. Jesus in Course in Miracles says, I don't know the exact quote, he said, I gave you a rather graphic demonstration of the idea that there is no death. And the energy influx at that time, space-time, which was just a few days ago, really, in reality, has been with you ever since. Came into formulation at Pentecost and is now contained in your genetic memory. It is impossible, as you are here at this moment, not to remember the occurrence of 2,000 years ago because you are constituted only in memory. That's literally all that you are. Your forebears remembered you and conceived you and made you in the image of themselves in limitation. And thus as it has ever been since the occurrence of the schism. You are Adam's dream. You are your own dream. The effects that appear outside of you, you have constructed. Are you saying to me then that the man Jesus made up, okay, within his limited framework of consciousness, the crucifixion and resurrection? Of course he did. Of course. A little tough for you? He says in Course in Miracles, I wasn't real. As I was identified, and as I identified myself, I was not real. Amazing, isn't it? There's a move afloat in regard to propitiation that somehow God came down or descended into man, and that Jesus knew very well that he was fulfilling the law. Sure. Remember, man becomes God in remembrance of his godhood. But while he's man, he's very man. And no one can go through the portal of death and retain identification of it but you, individually. And death is not your idea of death, as subtracted from you and observed in limited consciousness. Death is literally the process of annihilation of you as you are constructed. That's what being born again is. Dying, being born again. So what do we celebrate at Easter time? We celebrate the overcoming of death, or the recognition of the species identified man on the planet Earth being, in fact, a God. Know ye not that ye are gods? Greater things will you do than I have done. What are you waiting for? The determination of the identification and limitation to hold on to selfness and literally construct murder and greed and hate and anger have nothing at all to do with you, brother. You have a single assignment here, and that's to come to your own individual atonement, and none other. That is your sole function in consciousness. And that's what you're coming to know. Are miracles possible? Is it possible for the resurrection to be physical and real and for him to come back in the body? Of course. That's the least that you can do. If it is in fact your illusion, and I assure you it is, and it is your dream, why can't you change it? You prefer the idea that there's something outside of you that can attack you and cause you to be sick and die and feel pain? Isn't it easier for you, brother, to come at least intellectually to the idea that you're causing all this? And go from there. Then transformatively, it'll come about in you. You'll be able to see the truth, won't you? Of course. The energies that you're feeling now in this transformative process are very real and very genuine. They are occurring in you. It is your resurrection, isn't it? What does Jesus say in Course in Miracles? I changed my mind about it. And if one mind is changed, all minds are changed. There is no such thing as separateness. You cannot be separate from God. You are an extension of Him in truth, literally. The idea that you can be separate, or that you made yourself, and that you could construct outside of you visions or apparitions or ideas that would subsequently die with you, is simply a sign of your fractured thinking. It has absolutely no reality at all. The world is literally not real, and was not here at all until you remembered it, and will not be here when you discover its untruth through the discovery of who you really are. Teach that, brother. That's the truth. Have I then given you an assignment or responsibility? Of course, of the highest nature, through the recognition of you and the extension of your love to overcome so that the world can be saved. There is only one Son of God. There is only one state of consciousness as manifest by the extension of unity in the universe, and that is your state of being, your consciousness. There is nothing but that. Did you then die on the cross, and were you in fact in the tomb for 3 days, and did you rise again? Of course. Shall I do an analogy in your body of what occurs glandularly during that process so that I can bring you into this moment rather than have you remain historic in identification of it? What difference? You're all memory anyway. This is the time when you do it. This is the time when you remember, when the ancient melody plays for you. This is the time when the incredible joy of the recognition of your eternity flashes across your mind. And you will at that moment pay no longer any direct heed to anything that occurs on earth. You will simply subtract it. You see the unreality of it. It's a momentous occasion that is applauded in heaven as each of you individually comes into that truth. We await your homecoming. Everybody else is home. Just you, Ellen. All of the things that you've constructed outside of you and your projections in order to retain this false identity, Lucifer, are not real. There is only one Son of God, and it is you, prodigal. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for something outside of you that is in your memory banks to somehow show you the way? It can't. They can't. They are just your thoughts, your limited thoughts and consciousness. You have created indeed, but you have created falsely because you are false to yourself. We teach a course in Know Thyself, brother. Does that come about through an element of forgiveness? Of course. It is impossible for you to be unjustly treated. There is no such thing as exchange. You literally cannot have anything. You may only be, and you may only be truth. The icons and the symbols and stories, the parables, all stir deep memories in you and your karma responses. And this is what you want to stimulate, isn't it? You want to come into a focus so that everywhere you look, okay, you see that identity of union coming together, of singularity fitting into your patterns of truth. And that's what's occurring. Indeed, that's what the spiritual path is. But it's up to you. He is risen. Indeed, he is risen. As he says in Course in Miracles, the earth is literally not here. It was repaired the moment that the schism occurred. And you actually, in reality, have never left home. No wonder you get these stirrings in you that somehow you don't belong here, you're not here, you're not. Nice to know. He is risen indeed. You have risen indeed. If you are in responses where you're in your path, where you're in your Bethlehem, where you're in the temple, where you're teaching, where you're in your Gethsemane, be there. That's okay. You have risen indeed, folks. My Lord, why hast thou forsaken me? You live with that, literally, on a moment-by-moment basis. Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. It is finished. It's gone. I'm interrupting your dream. You are beginning now to have difficulty locating me. You are beginning in your own consciousnesses to extend from you your own identity through recognition of the light. Ah. What a strange notion that finally you'll never be able to locate yourself. Can you feel this? I have absolutely no idea where I am because I'm not anywhere. It may appear to you now as you project me that I'm somehow sitting here in a place in space-time and that you will retain identities. I'm not. I'm not here. Huh? Why would I be here? You're not here either. The highest truth, Jesus talks about this in Course too. The highest truth I can give you is when you come into true conception or an idea about yourself, you'll see obviously you could not be located anywhere. Where would you locate yourself outside of truth? Good. Well, you know what I'm really saying? I am you. Consciousness, the state, Dharma, in the universe, all of it is consciousness, only has one manifestation of awareness, our sun. that has been caused by him to establish causation. And that's you, in your consciousness. There isn't anything else but that. The single difference that would be apparent to you in that regard is the absolute recognition as a son of God that you did not make yourself. All right? You are not in that regard origin, but all of your creations, who you subsequently, through the extension of your truth, foster, are in fact your sons. And since there is finally no difference in godliness or fatherness, you are indeed the Father. That's the circle. Astonishing, isn't it? Creation, then, which could be identified in some forms as a form of action, never multiplies because it is always full. Jesus in Course in Miracles says consciousness is always maximal. You are always utilizing to its fullest, no matter what you may think about it. That's a nice thing to know. There are no idle thoughts, so all these beautiful thoughts that you're having about Easter are healing in the world. You cause no pain to anyone as you stay within your own love and truth. You are a great healer in that process. You don't accept the idea of death any longer. You see that you can't heal the illusion in separation. And through your own atonement and coming to truth, you look through it, and it's made whole by your idea of its wholeness. That's very lovely. That's precisely what occurred in the resurrection. You are risen. You are risen indeed. Be of good cheer. You offer your brother lilies now, not thorns. As you share that gift of gratitude and love with him, he will extend back to you the truth of you. In that forgiveness are you made whole. One little idea of total love carried to its completion transforms the world forever, and has. That's the power of your thought, Son of God. You cannot use it in limitation, but only in the truth of your extension, because it is literally your creative capacity. And your misuse of it and your inability to extend it from you are what cause pain and death. Literally. You die because of your attempts to hold on in limitation, to grasp and keep separate from the truth, yourself. Creation and love depend on flow. The Sea of Galilee thrives. It has outlets. The Dead Sea is dead. Everything flows in and nothing comes out. All humans on earth is constituted are dead seas. They have no outlets. They have no communication processes. They communicate only with themselves and have no reality in truth. Because love is communication. Love is recognition of yourself in love and purity. So you've been fishing off the wrong side of the boat, haven't you? Haha. Nice analogy. Yes. Yes. And some of you had some high recognitions and decided to go back to Galilee and fish anyway. We don't talk much about that. Peter? Come to your truths. It's all in you. It's all lovely. You've walked that 7 miles, son. You're past your Palm Sunday. You're born in your lower regions. You're coming into your truth. You've passed your heart and compassion center. You move very rapidly up to your prophesizing ability. The raising of Lazarus is man love for man, not godly. Brought about your crucifixion in Golgotha in your head, and your enlightenment in your crown as you come to the glory of your reality. Astonishing, isn't it? Happy Easter. Thank you. The notion of man risen from the dead always implies the sign of the cross, or the horizontal man who becomes what? Upright, right, at his point of junction, which is the spot of man-godliness, and moves vertically in order to transcend. There was always given in the beginning the Word, which is not the name of God, which, say, in the Jewish tradition would be Jehovah, but rather the sounding of the word, as in Elohim, which is really a word, a chant, a sounding that will cause what? A verticalness to occur in the dead, or the dead to rise.